Good morning, everybody. My name is David Gregory. I'm the China Market Business Advisor working in the advanced manufacturing and transport sector. And I'm joined this morning and co-hosting this event is my colleague, Mark Xu, the Assistant Director for Advanced Manufacturing and Transport based in China. So first of all, welcome to our audience, speakers and panelists for the first Cbbc Auto webinar of 2021. Today, we've chosen to focus on the topic of opportunities within the China auto aftermarket. This is a sector of the automotive industry that is growing very fast, projected by some at least to grow by 5 to 8% this year, and is naturally following on from a continuing increase in private car ownership in China. This morning's session is intended to offer a view of the market from different perspectives and the opportunities that it presents for UK companies. We have a very interesting lineup of speakers with Xie Yu of YASN, starting us off with an overview of the whole market. I will then be asking Stuart Taylor of G Technique and John McCluskey of GKN to present their story and observations of supplying into the market as UK brands. And we'll then wrap up with a panel session taking questions from the audience. Please note that if you do have a question to ask, then please just submit this via the Q&A box and we'll get to as many as we can during that part of the session. So let me start by introducing Xie Yu of the GM of YASN Exhibition and also the GM of the YASN Group, a major force in the auto aftermarket who've been holding exhibitions in the two key cities of Beijing and Guangzhou for the aftermarket since 2005. Xie Yu is going to give us an overview of the market and share his thoughts and insights. So Xie Yu, over to you, please.
谢总可以开始了。
OK， 大家下午好，我是来自雅山国际的谢宇，今天有向大家分享中国的汽车后市场。因为当前疫情在家，所以我更愿意理解为是疫情下的中国汽车后市场。疫情下的中国汽车后市场。OK。
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mr. Xie Yu of YASN Group, and today I'm going to introduce the market environment of the after-sales market in China. And obviously, we're under the COVID epidemic, so my speech today is mainly going around the after-sales market under the current epidemic climate.
中国的汽车后市场，坦率的讲，其实目前并没有受到疫情太多的影响。在2020年，上半年，整个市场的体量和市场的数量稍有变化，但是下半年又恢复了。
To be honest, the Chinese after-sales market haven't really been affected in 2020. There were some challenges and disruptions during the first 6 months. However, the market quickly recovered during the second part of 2020.
我现在在第一页的 PPT 上，给大家播放的是中国汽车后市场的整体的体量，115.2万是整个汽车后市场各种业态的。 总的数量。
So on my first page of my PPT, I'm going to share the whole market volume of the Chinese after-sales market. 那谢总，您方便分享一下 PPT 吗？
PPT 没有分享给我 ，sorry。
Just bring up the PowerPoint.
这是这个 PPT 上是我们的整个的这个后市场的一个体量，115万是我们的整个业态的总数，另外8万是我们的修理厂，也就是具有维修能力的企业。
So as you can see on the page, the 281 million cars on the road in China, with 1.152 million auto repair and services shops. There's over 80,000 repair factories and at least 50 auto service chain stores.
其中我重点提到了有50家汽车服务连锁。为什么提到这样一个特别的数字呢？其实后市场还有很多其他的业态，是因为这50家汽车服务连锁，它是目前后市场业态转型的一个基本体量。后面我会提到。
So today I'm going to concentrate on these 50 auto service chains, and I'll mention this further in my speech.
Okay. 下一页是汽车后市场，目前和前装市场其实是2种业态。独立售后将成为中国汽车后市场未来的主要的服务业态。
So as you can see from the PowerPoint, these demonstrate the number of 4S shops and where their profit lies. And also on the right of the page, it shows the percentage of the independent after sales market compared with the OEMs. And in the future, we believe the trend will increase even further with the independent after sales shops.
目前是处在2种业态的交织期间。现在整车市场，也就是我们传统的4S 店，在拼命想保住这些消费，但是后市场的独立售后才逐步崛起。
Currently, there's a battle going on between the 4S shops owned by the OEMs and the independent shops. Obviously, the OEMs are trying very hard to maintain, their clients and revenue. However, we see that the trend is moving towards the independent sales shops.
接下来，后市场的另外一个特点，想跟大家分享的是，产品市场开始向服务市场在转型。
So as you see from this page, there's a gradual movement from the product sales to the services sales.
怎么理解这句话呢？其实，在之前，我们在后市场更多的是以产品贸易或者是以产品选择为主，但是在往后的市场里面，更多的逐步转向的是谁服务好，我找谁为我服务。具体你在服务的过程当中用什么样的产品，不再是我关注的重点。但在这之前不是。
So as you can see, there's a gradual change from the product-orientated sales into the services sales. So there'll be more emphasis on whoever's going to provide the better services, and the client will choose these types of shops, and obviously the product will come with these services.
而在这之前，我们更多的是产品进入中国市场或者中国市场主要以销售产品为主，而汽车服务相对还比较薄弱。
In the past, the Chinese market concentrated on product sales, with the services industry relatively weak.
OK，这是我们国家 一个汽车消费的一个基本走势，以长江为界，基本上南方市场的消费潜力或者消费能力开始越来越大于北方。
Here's a demographic of the consumer spending on the auto after sales market by region. Obviously, the regions are all in Chinese. So there's 7 larger regions. So the first one is south of China, then east of China, then north of China, then south west, then central China, northeast, followed by northwest. And obviously, the trend is obviously the south of China and east of China leading the consumer sales or consumer spend on the auto after sales market.
当然，这个和我们国家目前的经济发展，总体的状态是基本吻合的。南方的经济和北方的经济差异越来越大，也导致汽车消费的差异越来越大。
And this is generally following the Chinese economy. Obviously, there's a growing gap between consumer spend and prosperity between North and China. So we've seen this wider gap growing with the auto after sales market as well.
往后，我的判断，3年之内或者是5年之内，这种差距还会进一步拉大。
So my estimation is that in the next 3 to 5 years, this gap will grow even further.
这个是国外企业进入中国的时候要注意的一个问题。
So maybe this is to be noticed by any foreign brand coming into China.
在这个过程当中有2个重点我要提到，一个是粤港澳大湾区，粤港澳大湾区周边面临的是4个世界级的城市，还有的就是若干个中大型城市，商机非常巨大。
So I would like to emphasize on the Greater Bay Area. Obviously, there's 4 huge metropolis in this region, followed by a lot of middle to large size cities. So this is potentially a huge market.
布局这个区域，对于我们后面的在中国的布局，我觉得意义非常重大。
So this is obviously very important for any newcomers into the market. This region obviously should be first priority if you're coming into China to the Chinese market.
还有就是环渤海经济区，环渤海经济区它面对着北方，是我们北方的一个代表性的经济发展区域。在中国汽车后市场布局南方，同时对于北方也需要有战略的存在，所以这也是一个我们不能忽略的区域，需要我们在投资中国的时候要注意。
So a second region I would like to mention is the Bohai economic region, which includes the Jing-Jin-Ji, the Beijing, Hebei, Tianjin area, as well as the Liaoning and Shandong province. So this region obviously covers a huge part of the North China market, and it's probably second on the list if you are coming into the Chinese market.
同时，中国最有代表性的3个城市，我也想把市场体量告诉大家。北京、上海、广州3个城市的市场规模，其实对于周边的辐射和带动都非常重要。
I would also like to mention these 3 specific cities. Obviously, this being Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. The spending of these cities are huge, and they also attract a lot of spending by the surrounding regions around these cities.
在传统意义上，上海或者说 长江三角洲主要是零部件的供应和辐射基地，广州主要是汽车用品市场全国的生产和供应基地。
Shanghai is a center for the auto supply chain components, whereas Guangzhou is focused on auto-related products. These are more consumer product related.
而北京主要是作为消费城市，消费的最大的基地存在。
And Beijing is one of the top spending cities in China, with its huge population and the wealth of the population.
另外就是我们国家的汽车消费的市场特点非常重要，这个我希望大家要关注，尤其是关注中国市场的，一定要关注这一个图。
So for anyone coming into the Chinese market, this is a very important page, as these are the key driver of consumer spending in the auto after-sales market.
3个层级的市场都处在不同的阶段，省级市场是已经相对成熟，有34个城市，而4线地级城市，他们的汽车消费才刚刚开始，乡镇的汽车消费市场正处在萌芽和起步阶段，所以未来的汽车消费将是多级市场，而多级市场对于我们整个行业特点的形成起着非常关键的作用。
So we can divide the whole Chinese market into 3 levels of market. So the 34 provincial are mature markets, whereas the over 40,000 shall we say towns and villages in the rural market are only in the starting stage. So there's huge potential growth within these regions.
还有就是目前的业态在发生着逐步发生着变化，众多的业态在未来都可能会整合成一种业态的存在。现在这种迹象正在加快发生。
So the type of these repair or maintenance shops, there's various categories. However, one trend we're seeing is a lot of these type of stores are being merged into a one-stop shop where they provide all of these type of services in one place.
还有就是我们的零部件分销模式在发生着变化，层级在减少。
Another trend is the spare part industry. So right from the manufacturer to tier 1 wholesalers to tier 2 and to the retailers, we've seen a reduction in the levels and more integrated system.
还有就是电商在影响着整个后市场的新的模式。
And also there's a growing trend of e-commerce, and a lot of the products you can now find on the e-commerce platforms.
还有就是前面我谈到的，疫情对于后市场的影响大概在20%左右。
And as mentioned before, in 2020, due to the epidemic, we've seen some correction in the Chinese market. So last year we've seen a reduction of around 20% in terms of the market size or spend.
后市场的发展没有受到太大的影响。
However, we don't estimate this to affect the long-term trend of the auto after-sales market.
还有就是价格驱动是目前市场的特征。
And for the after-sales market, the primary driver is still the price. The market is still very price sensitive.
对后市场的了解，尤其是现在状态的了解，对于后市场的整体的把握，我觉得非常重要。
An in-depth knowledge of the market is obviously very important if there are any UK after-sales market would like to enter the Chinese market.
车主的消费认知正在逐步形成，而车主的消费认知是我们后市场转型的关键因素。
Obviously, the market is led by consumer behavior and their spending trends. So understanding consumer behavior and their spending drivers is key to be successful.
前面的内容分享就差不多这些，因为时间关系，没有办法很准确的有翻译的原因，没办法把握时间节奏，所以向大家表示抱歉。
So the content of the Chinese market is coming to a close. So apologies due to obviously translation involved. I'm not sure if all the points it's been put across to everyone.
雅森在后市场深耕了20余年，对后市场有一定的资源和了解。希望多有机会跟大家互动和交流。谢谢。
Just a quick brief introduction about the YASN group. The group has been in existence for over 20 years and holds various exhibitions throughout the year. So if anyone obviously is interested in working with YASN, please do get in touch. Thank you.
谢谢。
Thanks everyone, and that's the end of the presentation. Thank you. Back to you, David.
Thank you very much indeed, Xiaoyu, for that very comprehensive overview of the market, and it really gets across, shall we say, the scale and range that you deal with in China. When you talked about 50 auto service chains alone and 1.1 million auto repair shops, and I'm sure we're going to come to that into those points in the Q&A. So yes, thank you again, Xiaoyu, and thank you, Mark, for your translation. I'd now like to move on to introduce Stuart Taylor. Stuart is the head of global business development for G-Technic Limited, who are a leading car care product company with a focus on protective coatings. Stuart's responsible for the distribution of product into over 60 countries and leads the sales function for the business. And Stuart has stated his ambitions very clearly that he wants to make G-Technic the leader in its field in China. Stuart's very kindly offered his time this morning to explain a little bit about G-Technic's approach to the market and where they are on the journey so far. So Stuart, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, David. Let me just share my screen. Right, hopefully everyone can see the presentation. So yeah, thanks for the introduction, David, very much appreciated. Today, I just want to really talk through our journey into the Chinese market and basically what we do and where we do it. So initially, I just want to share a bit of context around our products and where they fit into the different sales channels, and then move on to how we've identified what we wanted to do in China, what our background was, and where we're going, really. So yeah, just a little bit of background about G-Technic. The area that we sit in is what we class as smart surface science. So it's paint protection and car care products, but we do have a focus and speciality on protective coatings for all the surfaces of a car. It's our 20-year anniversary this year. We were founded in 2001 by a quantum physicist who had been selling older, more traditional surface protection, but was unhappy with the performance. So developed his own using his knowledge of how surfaces work, and the business was growing out of that. So we're a UK-based business based in Northampton. HQ, global HQ is in Northampton, and we have all of our research and development and production running out of that facility. As David mentioned, we have a global reach. We're shipping out to pretty much every country in the world, but I look after formal representation in 48 countries. Hopefully by the end of the month, that should be 50 countries, touch wood. In our sphere of our market, of our core competitors, we have the largest global network of accredited detailers. So our accredited detailers are our professional installers. We're very proud of our innovation and in-house capabilities for research and development. This week, we've just opened a brand new laboratory with additional resource and a new lead chemist who's joined the business as well to bolster our capabilities there. So yeah, as I mentioned, our core products are our car maintenance products to keep the car looking good. So we have a full range to maintain all the surfaces of the vehicle, and that's both interior and exterior. We've pioneered introducing antimicrobial technology onto the interior products, which has been very timely over the past 12 months. And we have a number of products that help with abrasion for internal surfaces, fabrics, leathers, vinyls, and that sort of thing, plus the cleaning products. But what we're most known for is our exterior products. So we have market-leading ceramic coatings for all the exterior surfaces of a car. And what this helps to do is it really enhances the aesthetics of the car, makes it very easy to maintain, and gives a lot of protection from chemical fallout, bird lime, basically everything that attacks your car. And what we've done is we've pioneered technology where our top product will last on the exterior of a car. We guarantee it for 9 years. We know that it lasts a lot longer than that. So just looking at our kind of 3 key sales channels, just to build a little bit of context around where we're looking to grow in the Chinese market. Our professional customers and what we call our accredited detailers are very important to us. There are customers they get access to our flagship ceramic coating. It's a very high performing product, but it needs specific training prior to being able to apply it. And we have a large global network of accredited detailers. As I mentioned, it's over 3,000, it's ever growing. And we have accredited detailers all over the world. So they're the kind of cornerstone of the business, really. They're our poster boys and girls. And they're the guys and girls who are always posting the nice pictures of Lamborghinis and Ferraris and things, which make for some very nice social media content. Then direct to customer, this has become very, very important to us over the past 12 months globally, with lockdowns of varying effects in different countries. People have been consuming products a lot more through e-commerce. So we've had significant success in these channels, and it's become probably our largest channel as it stands as a business. And then the third channel, which is really interesting and is going to be a big part of our growth in the Chinese market, hopefully, is the car dealership or 4S customers. So we have a ceramic coating solution for car dealerships to upsell to their customers at point of sale of the vehicle. And we've probably had this product range in existence for maybe three or 4 years. We're probably the market leader now in the UK market in the premium section of the market. So that's everything that we class as Porsche and above. We're the market leader there, and we're seeing some really nice growth there. And we've just had some really successful tenders over the past 2 weeks as well, which we've been awarded, which further cements our position in that market. So that's going to be very interesting how we look at that going into China. So that's a little bit of background about kind of what we do and where our product range sits in the after sales piece. And what we're doing really now is we've had distribution into China for quite some years. It's a legacy partnership that's been very good, but it was under an exclusive arrangement which wasn't giving us the traction we needed in the market. And we had steady sales into China that weren't to be sniffed at, but we weren't seeing any growth. So it came onto my radar that we needed to look at how we could identify China, but how we did that was quite a mystery. So probably 2 years ago now, I attended a Department of International Trade and Cbbc joint seminar on the Chinese market, and that kind of helped me realize the full potential of what we could achieve in China. So that kind of lit the fuse of what we wanted to try and do, and the start of our journey that we're currently in. So that prompted us to join the China-Britain Business Council and really take some advice on where we could go, what we could do, and how we could do it, and was it a market that we wanted to invest time, effort, and resource in. And with travel restrictions in place and where we were at the time, it was very difficult to get out to China to do anything. So what we worked with is we commissioned a piece of market research to really look at the market, look at our products, because we're still a relatively niche industry. So we needed to identify whether that niche industry was translating into the Chinese market. And what we found is that there was a huge piece of business that we could try and work towards. So the market research, when we received it, it really validated our hopes, and it provided the clarity and the justification that I could then take to the business to say, we want to invest in the Chinese market, and we need to look at a different way to grow the business, because through the exclusive partner that we had at the time, we didn't have the visibility that we needed to really grow and move forward. So we really wanted to look at getting some boots on the ground in China, to give us that insight into culturally how business was different, the different marketing strategies and things that we needed. So again, we leaned heavily on the Cbbc, and we utilized a platform called Launchpad, which helped us recruit a member of staff into G-Technic, but is based out of Shanghai. And we recruited that person early this year. So they joined the business at the beginning of February. And it was a really interesting process going through that interview and validation stage to find the correct member of staff to help us grow on that. And the Launchpad platform has really helped us make the most of our investment and get a high caliber individual to join the business to help us. Now that person has now been in post for a couple of months. So we now have a dedicated Chinese BDR, as I say, based out of Shanghai. And what that's really helping us understand is culturally how business is different and the different routes to market. One of the core things is Western marketing channels obviously don't work well in China. So Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of those things that have really helped us grow as a business globally are not widely accessible in China. So we need to replicate the success we've had on our core social media channels, but into the Chinese market. So again, working very hard there and just identifying nuances like the importance of Coles or key opinion leaders to help us grow effectively has been a really interesting journey to go on. So now our journey into the Chinese market really is just starting to gather momentum. We've had some really good contacts already, some really good meetings with potential distribution partners and customers, and it's all looking like it can be a really successful piece for us. So we're now going to heavily invest in making sure that our products are very much compliant with all the Chinese regulations, so we can become a core player in our market. And as David stated at the beginning, my ambition is to make us, whilst a relatively niche market, I believe that we can be the market leader in China for that piece. So yeah, very much at the start of our journey, but it all looks very interesting and should provide us with some good fun over the next couple of years. So yeah, thank you very much all for your time. I hope the journey that we've been on so far is of interest, and feel free to reach out should anyone want any further information.
So thank you very much indeed for that, Stuart. There's some very interesting points, I think, that you brought up there. I think you mentioned that initial relationship with an exclusive distributor, which I think sort of demonstrates it's the positives because it gets the business going, but there's always the danger that it might actually limit your growth in the future and may have to change tack. I think the other thing that I think is very interesting, you set out very clear steps in the way that you've gone about developing the business, which is again very interesting to hear. And I think the last point as well, which you just touched on there, is you just alluded to the importance of social media and how it operates in China. And I think again, these may be, if we have time, points we'll pick up on in the Q&A session. So I'd like to move on now to introduce John McCluskey, the president of GKN Automotive China and deputy general manager of SDS, which is GKN Automotive's JV in China. I believe I'm correct in saying that GKN has been in China for something like 30 years now, and John himself has been there for 7 years. So I think we're very fortunate to be hearing from a company and an individual with a lot of on-the-ground experience. And John's very kindly agreed to give his time this morning to talk to us about GKN's approach to an entry into the after-sales market. So over to you, John, please.
Thanks very much, David. I will share my presentation, and I hope that everybody can see that. There we go. Right, well, as David said, yeah, my name is John McCluskey. I'm the president of GKN Automotive in China and also deputy general manager of our joint venture. I just wanted to start, for those of you who don't know, by giving a very quick outline of what GKN does globally and then what we do in China. So we're a global leader in automotive technology. 50% of the cars made in the world contain our technology, and we work with just about every automotive manufacturer. Certainly, I think outside China, every automotive manufacturer that you could name. And we are predominantly focused on driveline, excuse me, and powertrain business, where we are the #1 globally in CV joints and all-wheel drive systems and electric drive systems. In China, as David said, we've been here for around 30 years, actually 33 years in September this year. And I think we're correct in saying we were the first Western joint venture in the automotive component industry in China. And we have a leading role here in the driveline market with just over 40% market share in our driveline business. We are effectively a 50-50 joint venture. So our joint venture partners are HASCO, which is a subsidiary of Shanghai Automotive, and the Bank of Communications. They make up 50% of the shareholders, and GKN holds the other 50%. Excuse me. So for those of you who are not familiar with driveline and powertrain products, this schematic shows what we can supply to the automotive market, and we do supply most of these products in China. Our core products, though, are the side shafts, and these are the parts that transfer the torque and the power from the differential to the wheels. So on a front-wheel drive car, there would be 2, and on an all-wheel drive car, there would be 4, 2 at the front and 2 at the back. And that's really, that's our high-volume product. We do about 20 million of those a year in China, and have been doing those since we started in 1988. And it's the biggest part of our business, and therefore it is the focus of our aftermarket business in China. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we have structured our aftermarket business and what our plans are for the future here. You'll see that actually, despite coming into China over 30 years ago, we really only started to focus on the aftermarket about 5 years ago. So we were quite a late entrant there. So I just start with some data on the market. I'm happy to note that most of our market data was in line with Xie Yu's data, so there's no embarrassment there. But what we have on the chart here on the left, it's a few data points here, but the grey line at the top is the average age of cars in the China market. And you can see that now it's around 6 years old, which is relatively young. Compared with the mature markets in Europe and the US, where the average car age is 8 to 12 years, you know, and the average car in China is much newer, and that has implications for the aftermarket and what we're doing here. The stacked bar chart at the bottom shows the populations by age group of the cars. So the grey is the cars that are 1 to 3 years old, the orange 3 to 10 years old, and the blue 10 to 15 years old. And the biggest growth segment there clearly is the orange. That's the cars that are 3 to 10 years old. And because it's the biggest growth segment and because of the dynamic of that market, that is our target market. If we look now at the chart on the right, that is what we call the repair rate of our products in the market. So you can see as the cars get older, the repair rate increases. And the big increase is after 5 years, which typically is when vehicles are out of warranty. So after that point, the repair rate, particularly in the independent aftermarket, grows very quickly to the point where when a car is around 8 years old, or when the average age of a car is 8 years old, then the repair rate typically is about 8%, meaning that 8% of the cars per year need some form of repair. So on that basis, with the average age being 6 years, and the growth in repair rate and the growth in the market, we think there is huge potential to continue to grow in the aftermarket in China. A little bit of history on our business growth. So IAM is independent aftermarket and OES is the OE service market, where we supply into the car manufacturers for their service business. Before 2015, we really didn't do anything for the aftermarket in China. We imported from GKN's network overseas for imported models in China for the independent aftermarket. And there's a number of reasons why we did nothing for the domestic aftermarket. And the chief one there was because of the growth of the market, we had very limited capacity to actually supply significant volumes to the aftermarket. So we concentrated on the OE business. We've now seen with the increase in the car age and the repair rate that there is actually a significantly growing market there. So we decided in 2015 that we would integrate the independent aftermarket business, the small amount that GKN had, and we would put that into a business unit in SDS, our joint venture, to focus on growing the aftermarket business. The chart here shows our actual and forecast sales growth there. And it's a very healthy shaped chart. Despite the pandemic and the drop in vehicle sales last year, we're confident that we can continue along this growth trajectory for the aftermarket business. If we look at the brand strategy, we actually have two brands in China. We have the SDS brand, which is our joint venture, and that covers all the domestic car applications. It's well known in China as an OE supplier, and it's trusted in the aftermarket. And then we have the Lebro brand, which is GKN's aftermarket brand outside China. So that is well recognized in the rest of the world. And that's what we use for the imported vehicles in China. And all of these parts are produced in the GKN businesses overseas. So our strategy here is that we will promote both of those brands in parallel in China, for covering the domestic market and the imported market. And we expect that we will be significantly ahead in the SDS brand, where we have the biggest population of vehicles to cover. In terms of distribution, we think it's fundamental to get to the end customers to build up a strong distribution network. We currently have about 30 distributors focusing on the tier 1 and the major tier 2 cities to develop the local markets. The distribution of our distributors, if you like, is aligned with the size of the market. So back to Xie Yu's presentation, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Beijing area, where we have the largest spend in aftermarket, is where we have the biggest concentration of our distributors. We're going to continue to grow our distributor network. We're looking at getting from 30 to 40 distributors in the next couple of years. And as part of that, we will be replacing the underperforming distributors. And our objective here is to build up a really strong distribution network in China, which supports our business growth. As far as distribution strategy is concerned, I think fairly straightforward. Our main channel is through this kind of hierarchical model where we will supply from GKN and from domestic manufacturing into tier 1 distributors mainly, into some tier 2 distributors, but mainly the tier 1s. They will distribute either to the tier 2 distributors or directly to garages, repair shop and quick repair services. And for the OES sales, we supply into the OEM and they distribute themselves. In common with most people, we're looking at direct to consumer sales using the e-commerce platforms in China. And we've started this year trialing some direct sales on the popular platforms, Kangjong, Tmall, ETC, and JD mainly, to see how that takes off. We're not 100% committed to going that way. We want to trial it on a relatively small scale first to see how it works and how the interactions are with our distributors, who will also have access to purchases on the e-commerce channels. The other thing we're looking at is where we want to cover applications that we don't supply direct to the OEMs. We're looking at how we can do that, and we're also looking at the use of subcontracting for some of that to provide us access to additional capacity and reduce our costs and improve our market competitiveness. And then finally, if we look at our business plan, two separate legs to that, the independent aftermarket and the OE sales, both of which we expect over the next 5 years to achieve significant growth. So the independent aftermarket, we think we can achieve about 220% revenue growth. And we do that by going from a 5% share of the independent aftermarket to 15%. We will be looking at our service kits and the number of service kits that we're able to offer to the consumers, and we'll be increasing that from 1,100 variants to 1,400. Increasing our tier 1 distributors over the 5-year period from 30 to 80, and the tier 2 distributors from 20 to 50. So we will have a much better access to the market. This doesn't include yet the potential impact of the e-commerce platforms that we are trialing. So if we can be successful in those and they don't cannibalize the direct sales, then we have the potential to see further growth beyond what's written here. A similar story on the OES. We have a fairly strong customer base at the moment, but we're going to be increasing the number of OEMs that we supply OES parts to. And we think we can just about double our revenue in that business in the 5-year plan period. So very simply in the independent aftermarket, increasing our market share from 5 to 15% in a growing market, and for OES to continue to add customers to the portfolio to increase the revenue growth there. I've rattled through that fairly quickly. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed for that, John. I think there's several things that come out of that which are interesting. I mean, you started off by saying that you sort of joined the party in aftermarket a little bit late, but then, which did, I have to say, I wonder why that was, but then when you went on to explain that the fact is that your capacity was wrapped up with supplying the new market before you got to this point, which was very, very illuminating. You know, you've touched on the fact that you're dipping your toe in the water with e-commerce, and I think that may well come up again in the Q&A session. And the other point, I think, which make a lot of people sat in their businesses in the UK looking here at your projection for the next 5 years of a 220% increase in this particular part of business, I think would make a few people quite envious.
Well, I didn't put the absolute numbers on there because we're starting from a fairly small base.
I understand that, but I think it's interesting, John, from the point of view that, you know, you're a business that's been there for, as you say, 33 years, and yet there are still opportunities presenting themselves at scale all the time. Anyway, thank you very much for that. I'd now like to move on to the question and answer session. And as well as being joined on the panel by our three presenters, Xie Yu, Stuart Taylor, and John, we also have three more guests joining the panel. So first, can I introduce Rick Jolly? Rick is the Executive Vice President for Purchasing for Jaguar Land Rover for China and Asia Pacific. And Rick leads a team of 193 people, with those members stationed across Greater China, South Korea, and India. And Rick's department is responsible for all the procurement and supply and quality activities in Greater China and Asia Pacific. We're also joined by Jamie Rowlands, who is a partner in the intellectual property team for Gowling GLG. Jamie has been enforcing and protecting clients' intellectual property interests for nearly 20 years, with a strong focus on patents and trademarks. And consistent with his international outlook, Jamie lived in China and headed up the firm's China practice between 2015 and 2019, where he was involved in all aspects of IP litigation, including involved with the Chinese court system, as well as administrative and criminal counterfeiting actions. And finally, we're also joined by a colleague of John's, Xu Jian, the commercial director in GKN's JV SDS. So let me first put a question to Jamie, if I may. And Jamie, perhaps you can share with us a few thoughts on you know, a UK company entering the market in China in discussion with a distributor or a potential partner. What sort of things should they be considering so that they can protect sensitive commercial information?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, David, and thanks everyone that's spoken so far. I think it's been some really interesting stuff has been talked about. To your question, David, I mean, it's a sort of $1 million question, really, is how far do you go before you enter China to protect yourself? If you know, because you've got to obviously think commercially as well. But I've been approached by many different companies over the years who have seen the dollar signs of China and sort of jumped into relationships with third parties, whether distributors or manufacturers, without doing certain basic things, which has really come to bite them at a later date. So both with distributors and manufacturers, what I would say is due diligence is absolutely vital. Spend some time getting to know your potential partners in China. If that means having to, I appreciate we're in a pandemic at the moment, so this is not an easy win today, but if you're coming from the UK, you don't know China well, spend some time where possible traveling to China, or get a trusted agent in China to do some due diligence for you, just to make sure that you're starting with the right partner. I think secondly, it is really important to think about what you want your China partner to do and what information you need to provide to that partner in order to facilitate the needs of the business. And where possible, when it comes to confidential information or valuable information to your business, you should try to minimize giving everything in one go. Try to streamline the disclosures in such a way that if in fact after preliminary discussion things don't work out, you're not left in a position where you've just given too much of your information that could actually be misused at a later date. Thirdly, always try and sign an NDA. Now, I know some companies will say, look, early commercial discussions, we don't want to rock the boat. Some companies, whether Chinese or otherwise, won't or push back on signing NDAs for preliminary discussions. I say to those clients that come to me in those circumstances, well, you need to think twice about whether you actually want to continue with those sort of discussions with those companies, because I think it's quite a red flag, frankly, if a potential business partner is unwilling to sign up to an NDA which kind of focuses the mind about the information being disclosed. My final point, which is a huge discussion and we can't get into it today, but as an IP lawyer, obviously my general message to any company going into China is register your IP as early as possible. Now, again, there is a really difficult decision to be made there from a commercial perspective, because obviously, you know, particularly if you're an SME, you're budget constrained and therefore you can't just go and register everything. But for example, if you are distributing a product, do try and protect its brand. Brands are so easily misused in China. We've heard both from Stuart and from John about the importance of e-commerce now in China. Alibaba, so Tmall, Taobao, JD.com, these are massive, massive marketplaces for UK companies in China. If you have a trademark registered in China and you are seeing that misused on those platforms, Alibaba, JD.com do have complaints mechanisms, which means you can get stuff taken down. But without registered trademarks, it's much, much more difficult. And the same goes with other IP rights as well, particularly in the aftermarket. Of course, design patents are something that should be considered. But overall, just the earlier one can register IP, or at least consider an IP filing strategy in China, would be highly recommended.
Thanks very much, Jamie, for that. And I think that's hopefully very encouraging to people, because there's always a skepticism about the degree of protection you can expect in China. But clearly there are systems in place and the mechanism in there. It's just a question of availing yourself of it and making sure that you go through the proper steps. I don't know if anybody else of the panel wants to comment on that, or shall we move on?
I think certainly from our point of view, as Jamie mentioned, we are an SME going into China. And one of the key things that we were concerned about was our IP as we went. And we'd already seen some counterfeit products appearing in some other markets as well, which we look to be coming out of Asia. So we did some initial IP protection and got trademarks organized. But interestingly, now what we're doing is looking at getting the Chinese name for the brand trademarks and things, which we hadn't necessarily considered. So we're now going through the process of that. So that one might be a little bit more tricky. So Jamie, I might actually need to call you at some point.
well, please do. I mean, I always like to get a win on a call like this. But no, please do. And actually, it's a very good idea to, whenever you're in China, you should think about not only the sort of UK brand name, but also the China equivalent. And really importantly, is getting some brand intelligence from a Chinese agency to make sure that your Chinese brand works for the Chinese market, because a number of companies have fallen foul with that one.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. But if you two would just mind staying on the call before you start your conversation. Rick, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, obviously you have quite a wide remit dealing with all the purchasing, not just for China, but for the greater Asia region. You and I had a brief discussion about this the other day. I wonder if you can share your thoughts a little bit about the differences, shall we say, in consumer expectations in China.
I think that's a really good question, David. There are differences on a product level. And I think there are differences on a customer expectation level as well. So, I mean, everyone's market will be slightly different. Ours, for example, in premium automotive, there are a few differences from the aftermarket supply that we've got globally to China that spring to mind immediately. One is that a high aftermarket runner for us globally is in the tow bar market. Whereas in China, actually, it's an area that there's very, very little demand for, if any, at all. So another good example that I'd give you would be in tyres. Spare tyres, generally, the UK, rest of the world, the customer will go to whatever the local equivalent of Quick Fit is to buy tyres through a third-party provider. Within in the China market for us, in the premium auto sector, then the customer wants to go to the 4S dealer as a one-stop shop for tyres, oil, even wall boxes for charging, which again, in the UK and other global markets, it's a very different supply chain. So I think understanding, your particular product, the policies around that in China, and the customer's expectations in China are going to be incredibly important for anybody looking to move into the market, because there will be differences. And customer expectations, again, I mean, of course, globally, the customer is king. In China, that's even more important. The Chinese customer expectations are very, very high, both in terms of speed of service and also value for money. Initially, I think the Chinese consumer will have a small degree of tolerance if there is a problem with the product that needs to be fixed. And if there is a problem that needs to be fixed, then it needs to be fixed very, very quickly. That presents problems for any supplier or manufacturer, particularly when you're dealing in a market that may be a long way from your home market, because you'll know that the kind of cost agile and lean supply chains aren't natural friends when you're on the other side of the globe. So, ensuring that you've got the products that you need for your aftermarket and service supply close at hand so they can be supplied quickly to the consumer, but then also having a huge stock of various parts in region can give you with issues in terms of your the cash tied up in that stock holding. So you need to think very carefully about how you balance that. One of the things that we've done and we've learned is obviously to ensure that we've got high running sales and aftermarket supply products available locally in China, localized in the region, so that we've got quick access to those where we've got high demand runners, but also making sure that we've got critical parts available on hand, so that our consumers and our customers are not kept waiting. The concept as well of the premium customer expecting our dealerships to provide a one-stop service for tyres, or oil, wall boxes, you name it. We also have to ensure that we're providing a very personalised approach for our customers. I think personalisation, feeling special, again, very, very important for all customers, but even more important in the Chinese market. So, that understanding of the customer's expectations is, I cannot overemphasize how important that is, because the other thing, of course, that's will happen again globally, but again even more so in China. Reputation is incredibly important. Word of mouth through the Chinese social media outlets, WeChat, etc. If a customer has a poor experience of service, that message will get spread very, very quickly. So being very mindful of that risk, which could damage your brand, and being prepared to look after your customers and ensure that they feel valued and special, again, incredibly important for the aftermarket supply for us, and I'm sure for everybody else in China as well.
Thanks, Rick. That's great. You covered a lot of ground there, but I think understand very well from products right through to the importance of getting it right for the customer and the ramifications if you don't on social media, which I think we've all been there. We have a question for Xie Yu. So Mark, perhaps if you can offer a translation and help out with this. The question is quite simple, actually. It's what is the advantage and disadvantage of UK companies developing their business in the China market?
Thanks, David. 谢总，您在线上吧？
我在现场。
对，那个现在我们有一个问题是针对您这边的，这个在问这个对于一家英国企业来说，他们进入中国市场，他们的优势和劣势都有哪些？
优势是进口产品。中国市场目前对于进口产品，其实在很大程度上是给予更高关注的。劣势就是2点，第一个，价格优势没有，价格贵；第二一点是市场策略不灵活。中国是一个新兴市场，很多进入中国的产品都按照成熟国家的市场操作方法去操作，其实是错的，或者是被动。
好的，谢谢，我先翻译一下。Hi, David. Yes, as Mr. Xie was just saying, there's one advantage and two disadvantages. The main advantage is obviously the Chinese consumer views a higher value for imported goods and products. So that's the main advantage. The disadvantages is being obviously imported products are more expensive. And secondly is their flexibility and speed of change in adapting to the local market. A lot of the international brands coming into China still operate as if they were in their kind of original, Western European American markets, whereas the local environment and the speed is totally different here in China. So that speed of change, adaptability, and flexibility in the Chinese market, it's not to the Western brands' advantage, shall we say? Does that explain?
Yes. No. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Xie Yu. I think, I think there's interesting points raised there. I think flexibility and speed of change is something which is always a challenge for companies, even foreign companies even based in China, because generally we move at a more measured pace. I think the point about reputation, though, is very valid. I mean, obviously, the UK's got an enviable reputation for export and sales of premium brand UK vehicles in China, and one would assume that rubs off onto the related parts, services, etc., that go with it. But yes, very interesting answer from Mr. Yu. John, there's a question come in from from Aman Wong, who says, very impressive growth trajectory. But how do you see Chinese domestic competitors growing, and how does that influence your strategy in China?
Yep, thank you for that question. I'm going to hand that one over to Xu Jian, who has, using social media, already agreed to answer it. So over to Xu Jian.
Xu Jian, there he is.
Okay, hi, yes, gentlemen, this is Xu Jian speaking, and I'm in charge of the sales and marketing in SDS. And regarding the question raised by Emma Wong, actually for the IM business, our Chinese domestic competitors are growing very, very fast. But for IM market, we observed actually some the top 3 or top 5 competitors. They are aiming to the export business, and their target business is in Europe and American, and they see all the shop assembly to the overseas market. And there are so much small competitors, but do we think they are aiming to the very low end and the very old car age market, and by the size is quite quite huge, but the volume is very, very small. So we think they are growing faster, but we are still confident to growing as in our strategy, because so far for the OEM market, we have covered the more than 45% market share for all the car makers, and current for RM business, we have only 5% market share, and we are aiming to achieve 50% market share by 2025. That's why we think we have the advantage. The second one is we are aiming to the premium brand market in China, which we think this is our biggest advantage to achieve so.
Thanks very much for that. And I think that's quite interesting that you talk about some of the larger main competitors basically not even focusing on the domestic market, but the export market, and then the competition from a myriad of other players being at the sort of low quality, which sort of, again, sort of underlines to me the issue of understanding the market in China that you are going for. You are not looking for the whole market, you are looking for a specific part of the market. So thank you very much.
Yes.
I've got a question, I think, well, we'll start with Stuart, but I think John probably bring you in on this as well. Stuart, you touched on, during your presentation, the importance of sort of getting your head around social media and the fact that it's working on completely different platforms in China. But it sort of leads me to thinking about selling product through e-commerce channels, which I know you do very successfully in other specific markets around the world. Is there a view from yourself that you will follow that route in China as well as selling to detailers? And I ask the question because, you know, China for many, many things, including the auto market, is seen pretty much as a DIY market. You do not see guys out on the street fixing their car or washing their car. It's all done through other people. So do you think a market exists even to sell your product as products that people will apply themselves or use themselves through e-commerce channels in China, or maybe not?
I think we do, because we're looking to segregate out tiers of customers. So whilst we have our professional network of detailers who we sell to directly, because we accredit them, so we have to kind of control the products they can get, we then have an entire tier below of professionals who use the products in their businesses still, but are not necessarily accredited by us. So our top level product is very, very effective, but our level down, which is not a professional only product, is still used by a lot of professionals. So that whole tier down of customer in China, where we're not necessarily looking to accredit everyone to be a professional customer, but where you have detail shops and businesses doing that, who don't necessarily meet the criteria that we want for our accredited network, we can still then target them through the e-commerce platforms and market directly to them. So yeah, we see the e-commerce piece very much hand in hand, and obviously you can tie it into the social media channels as well, and what we're doing on social media to really build a bigger picture of the brand. So yeah, we think there is some significant market share there for us with what we class as our tier 2 professionals, not our accredited, our level down from that.
Okay, that explains it very clearly. So you're not actually pitching directly to individuals. You're picking to say to the shops that don't necessarily draw any other service from you. They're simply buying your products to use themselves.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Okay, fine. John, you touched on the same thing in your presentation, sort of indicating that you're dipping your toe in the water with this. Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think I share your view about the man in the street not going out and buying a car component and getting underneath and fitting it himself. I think our trial with the online platforms is more aimed at products going directly to the repair workshops and the garages that would typically buy from our distributor network. So we have to look at whether that works, how that sits with our distributor network, because we rely on sales. If it's going to trash our distributor network, then it's probably not worth doing. So that's why we're sort of starting small, just to see how this goes. But no, I don't expect hundreds of people sitting at home to be ordering our products to fit themselves.
Okay. All right, that's clear. So time is ticking on. Let me just put one more question. I'm not sure who this will apply to, And Mark, you may need to offer a translation for Xiaoyu. The question's from Matt Smith, and I think it's a Matt Smith I know. Morning, Matt, from SMMT. And the question is, in the UK, we are familiar with online systems whereby you enter your registration number to bring up a list of parts that fit your car. Is there such a system in China? Or how do people buy parts online? People, I guess, small shops. Anybody, any idea on that?
Would you like me to translate this?
If you wouldn't mind, Mark, Xiaoyu probably is the best place to answer it.
All right. 谢总，您还在线是吧？
我在。
对，这个他们问了一个问题，就是说在英国，他们要买这个汽车零部件的话，他们很简单的把这个零部件的有一个编号，它这个放在那个网上一查就可以知道在哪儿去采购这个零部件。他们问在国内有没有这种，他们是怎么在线采购的？有没有这种像零部件的编号这种系统？还是他们是怎么去寻找他们想要的这个零部件的？
国内据我所知，目前还没有零部件的统一的编号。要购买的话，可能还是通过电商平台和线下实体店，通过输入商品的名称去查询购买。
这个商品名称，因为有些名称是很笼统的，他们怎么找到这个相关的就是对应的这个型号啊？这个知道吗？
它的其实就是国内对于这些产品，你比如说某某车的某某什么产品，它是这样，基本上是这样的形式在查。
好的，
有一些会有一些编号，有些没有。
Yeah, just translating that. In China, there isn't a kind of registration number or code for each individual product. So if you would like to purchase online, basically what you have to do is to type the model of the vehicle and the name of the component or part. And that should normally come up with the right product. Obviously, you know the model will sort out by year as well. So this is not generally how people search for the products. So it's not in a kind of orderly kind of system as if you would buy them in the UK.
I think that's clear enough. I think there is an element of some system, but it is not as readily accessible as it would be in the UK, and does certainly rely on having, shall we say, some professional help from your repair shop or the service provider. Okay.
Sure. I just like to share one experience, because I just bought a windscreen swiper the other day. I didn't know what I was doing the first time I purchased parts online. So I just typed in there, because on the online purchase platform, there's always a service help desk line. Right. And in China, it's almost, I would say, 24 hours. So you go into the shop and then type in saying, I would like to buy a windscreen wiper. They ask what is the model of your vehicle. Right. And you just type that in, and they just, in 10 seconds, they send me a link saying just go in there and click purchase. It was easy as that, and it came in within 2 days. I just fit it myself.
Which is interesting, because it sort of goes back to Rick's point about customer service expectations are very high. Yes, you want a windscreen wiper and you want it now.
Yes, it's extremely quick, and the online service, it's much better here than the UK, I must say.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, you and Mark, for those responses. Well, I think we're sort of running a little bit over time, and unfortunately, I don't think we've got time to take any more questions. So I'd like to thank, I'd like to say that I think we've all gained some really useful information and insight from our speakers today. And on everyone's behalf, I'd like to thank Xiaoyu of YASM, Stuart Taylor of G-Technique, and John McCluskey of GKN for the effort and time they've put into this. And also, of course, to Jamie Rowlands, Rick Jolly, and Xu Jian for their participation and contribution to the panel session. Chris Chris, have you got the next slide, please, with the events? So yeah, please do keep in touch with CBBC as we have a full program of events coming up throughout the year. And here's just a few highlights of what we expect to come up for April and May. And also just to let you know that the next Advanced Manufacturing and Transport webinar will be sometime in May. Details will be following shortly and will be posted on our events page and sent out to you in mailers. And finally, if anybody would like to get in touch with us at CBBC, there's details on this slide for myself. I'm based in the UK, and my colleague Mark, who is based in China. So let me again thank our speakers, panelists, and of course yourselves for listening today. And goodbye.